Welcome to AskWeldon Show, episode 88. A couple of announcements. First of all, I got this really cool extrasensory devices like jack for OS X or for MacBooks. So like now I can actually use my lavalier mic with my Mac when I'm recording. So I think that I'm gonna have higher sound quality or like more lined up sound quality for all of my shots in the future, which is cool. Next step is upgrading my camera. And I'm getting there, but I'm trying to find a camera that I can use with OBS because I like doing all the pre-production and then like straight up filming. But there's not a lot of cameras that will feed into the computer. Like I already have an iSight, which is like highest quality camera you can get outside of the Logitech webcam, which is still not, like 4K video that you see on YouTube. So I'm just trying to figure out like what the best solution is for traveling, for creating really high quality video that it is streamed in the computer live, not live, but like into OBS, that I can do all the pre-production instead of taking a video file and then recording it from my camera, putting it on my computer and editing it and adding in all the graphics. I can do all the graphic editing in OBS, and then I can do it and I can make the transitions and the graphics live by pressing buttons like as it goes. So it's like pre-production to production, so it comes out as the YouTube video will look like eventually at the end without having to do any post-editing. So I like that because it saves me time, but it requires some sort of janky setup since there's not a lot of computers that can stream in at that speed. Maybe I need to wait till USB-C comes around or something like that. Anyway, second announcement. I know lots of people commented on the hats, like, why are you wearing a hat? It looks silly. Some people say, hey, I love your hats. The reason I'm wearing a hat is because it would be even more silly if I was just showing you my hair, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to wear a hat. Apologies to people who don't like hats, think the hats look stupid on me. I feel bad for you. When I get a haircut, maybe I'll take it off. Problem solved. Okay, let's jump into the show. Question number 1 comes from Ushawi on Twitter, U-S-H-A-W-I, and he or she asks, wait, hang on. I'm trying to scroll this down without screwing up the thing. How can I improve decision-making in-game and outside of game? That's a really good question. Improve decision-making in-game and outside of game. I assume you mean in-game decision-making while in-game and outside of game. So not outside of game decision-making, like do I go to the movies or not tonight? Which I assume you can figure that out yourself. I do have some advice for it, but the way that I try to train decision-making is that you have to put yourself in a position to make the decision and then remember to make the decision. So you need some sort of like trigger in the game to make you choose the new thing instead of to go with the automatic reflex, right? Decision making is kind of like a bunch of automatic decisions that you make based on your image or representation of how the game should be structured and played. So when you want to upgrade yours or change it, you need to knock yourself out of automaticity or automatic play and into like reflective play and upgrading your decision making. So one good step to that is just question everything you do. Try to get used to just trying to change everything. Another thing you can do is like have somebody remind you. That's a tactic I took in TSM, was with position coaches. Like somebody just reminded them in the game, like, oh, do this thing, don't do this thing, etc., etc. And then something else you can do outside of game is the mirror. So you look at your play and you just watch the VOD and you say like, okay, why did I do this? And you try to rationalize through what it felt like in that moment to make that decision. And you try to imagine what it would be like to make the new one, to kind of pre-program yourself to then go in the game and remember at that moment to make that decision. Another thing you can do is like leave little notes, like different kind of notes every time so you don't get used to them. Like when you're leaving base, to remind yourself in the game to do these things differently when you get to lane. Because the problem is that in League that the training arcs are so long, like 30-minute game, that's something you want to train 20 minutes into the game, doesn't come around until 20 minutes into the game, and by then you've forgotten you want to train it and you don't focus on it. Yeah, it's really challenging. So there's a couple tactics for that I just suggested. Okay, second question from OW_Raven, OW_Raven. And they ask, in scrims we usually have at most a couple of minutes. Oh, Overwatch Raven, not OW_Raven. Okay, I get it. In scrims we usually have a couple of minutes to go over post and pregame talk. How do I make the most out of this time? Yeah, how you use those in between game talks determines whether you're the number 1 team or the number 10 team. That's all you have. That's everything, okay? So you have to find out the most effective system that week for how you should review. And I think it changes week to week. That's the thing that I discovered this season is the system that I had for 4 weeks didn't work for the next 4 weeks and didn't work for the next 4 weeks. I had to keep evolving it and changing it to suit the needs at that moment. So 1 week we had 5 minutes of individual review where they had to look through their own VOD, 5 minutes of team strategic review for 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes of position coach review. Okay, and that had to change based on the needs of the week. Sometimes it was all the time spent on team review. But remember, as much as painful as it is to cut back on the team review from like 20 minutes to 10 minutes, two things happen when you do that. One, you eliminate the noise. So because you only have 10 minutes to 20 minutes, you spend more time on what's important and less time on what's not important, on the one or two things that really matter. And then secondly, and then you get to cover more. So like one problem with all 5 people doing a review of one topic is that like sometimes that problem has to do with 2 people a little bit and 3 people not at all, or 2 people a lot and 3 people not at all. So then the other 3 people are wasting their time. They could be doing individual reviews. So you have to efficiently determine like when you've hit the point where something's not a 5-man play or a 5-man decision and like split off into individual review. So those are my suggestions. Experiment a lot. Keep it very, 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 very structured and stick to that structure for a couple days at a time, and then reevaluate the structure, get feedback, and then adjust it. Okay. Next question comes from CAFF, C-A-F-F, which I think is like white in HTML notation. How would you approach working with a team like Reunited that always plays their worst in the grand finals? So a lot of fans misinterpret bad play for choking. And most of the time they're wrong. Most of the time players play up to the level that they can. They don't choke. And they're just worse than their fans wish them to be. Other times players choke, which means that they actually play worse than they should because of the pressure of the environment. And in that case, you have to increase the pressure everywhere else so they get used to coping with pressure. It's just all there is to it. The only way you can practice not choking is by amping up the pressure so that you choke all the time or some of the time, and then you can practice how you cope with that and lower the choking. Okay. Next question is from another Cole. He asks, or she asks, you spoke about highest chance of winning with lowest chance of losing as IMT styles. How would you define yours then? No, I spoke of that as our style. The highest chance of winning with the lowest chance of losing is what each team should aspire to. I don't think Immortals played the highest chance of winning with the lowest chance of losing. I think that's how they scrimmed. They scrimmed to win the scrim by picking champions as snowball, but they didn't pick for the future, as in like what's going to be good in 3 weeks based on how the meta goes. So yeah, I think you should always design your composition with the highest chance of winning and the lowest chance of losing as a composition design. And then you learn how to pilot that composition independent of whether or not you're winning or losing the scrim, if you truly believe that's the way to play. So I would define IMT-style as the opposite of that. They picked to win the scrim instead of designing a composition that would win the game. Sorry, my table keeps moving. Okay, next question is from Kofu, F-C-O-F-U on Twitter, and they ask, what would you do if one of your players breaks down after a loss and still has a match to play? What is the approach? So you have to help them reset, and that's individual with every person. You have to know how that player resets, like what it takes, right? So I would approach that by having long conversations with them throughout the season so that you know how it is their normal arc of like overcoming tribulation and triumph and like resetting and what their high performance state is. Another thing you can do is there's this questionnaire called Psychobiosocial States Scale, PBS, Psychobiosocial States. I know that it starts with P, but that's how psycho starts. PBS, scale 20. And you can use that to determine like what your personal individual performance profile looks like. And then you can like, and that's individual. That is something that is unique to you because somebody else's is going to be the opposite. Like Soren's performance state for high performance before performance is different from Peter's. And that's true for every performer. And so What you want to do is identify what theirs is, and then you want to get them back to that equilibrium state by conversation or training or warm-ups or activities or social support or something, whatever it is that they need. Usually it's something along SEAR's lines, SEAR, which is support, empowerment, accountability, or respect. Okay, and the final question is from TieMan37MLG. And they ask, how can I achieve the level of hyper-focus that pros do, cutting out the bad day I'm having or whatever and focus on the game? It's kind of habit. You have to be really good at cutting everything out and focusing on the game, and that's a trained skill. Okay, it's not an accident. It's something you can pick up unintentionally and be able to do, or it's something that you can train yourself to do. It's up to you. If you already can do that, great. You don't need to worry about it. If you can't do that, then learn how to do it. There's two things that I recommend. One of them is gratefulness. That's a really good reset switch. So I recommend something like the 5-minute journal, which you'll find linked down below, which is a tool that I use with all the teams, and we do every single morning. All the teams I've ever worked with, and it's predicated on gratefulness conditioning, which allows you to condition yourself to be resilient. And resilience is that idea of like throwing something aside and focusing on what's needed. The other thing is, in the training environment, I ruthlessly tell them to throw aside everything that doesn't matter and focus on what's important all the time. And anytime I find them distracted by something that's unimportant, we discuss why that's unacceptable. And then finally, mindfulness. That's all that's about, is focusing on the experiences happening right now and getting rid of the rest. And there's two ways you can practice mindfulness. One of them is through my program, the Mindfulness Acceptance Commitment Program, which you find linked down below. The other one is through something like Headspace, which is just mindfulness training. It's not any of the other acceptance commitment training that goes along with it. It's just the mindfulness part. Of course, I recommend my program because I think it's the best, but Headspace, or even better, Tara Brach's website, T-A-R-A space B-R-A-C-H apostrophe S, Tara Brach's website. She has a bunch of free mindfulness training. It's not really sports specific, but it's kind of the same principle that we do there. All right. Short show today, that's all I want to do for today, just 6 questions, and I will catch you guys next time.
Hey guys, I just want to encourage you to follow me on Snapchat so you can keep track of all of the cool adventures that I have in places like Korea, where we're training right now, and so that you can ask me questions and follow along with kind of my behind the scenes of high performance coaching.